Good morning. Can we do that again? Good morning. Thank you. I made the observation it's kind of quiet in here, and I'm a little bit of a noisy person. I get excited. So I've often been told that when I speak, I need to slow down because English isn't everybody's native tongue, and it's not my native tongue either. Yet I've been living in the United States for quite a few years. And I was thinking when I came, well, how would I start this talk? And 9 years ago, I was here in Budapest speaking at another conference. And Saturday morning, I went to the open market, and I was walking around, and it felt like I was back with my grandmother in Germany, late 60s, early 70s, going to the market, going shopping. And I said, I really like this. This feels right. I think I want to do business in Europe. And that's what the talk is a little bit about. When you have a clear vision, anything's possible. 9 years ago, I made the decision to work in Europe. I had a business in the States, said, let's do one in Europe. Is it possible? I'm here to tell you that 9 years later, I spent 60% of my time in the US, 40% of my time in Europe. It's possible. I'm the person who absolutely believes that anything is possible if you're willing to work for it. And that's what I want to talk about today. I don't read slides, so you can see this. Yet it has a lot to do with what's your personal narrative. What is the story that you repeatedly tell yourself about what's possible, what's not possible? Do you look for the obstacles or do you look for the opportunities? And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today, how you do that both for yourself as an individual and in companies. Every morning when you wake up, you have a choice to make. How will you see the world that day? Will you look for opportunities or will you look for problems? I'm often asked, don't you think we should talk about our problems? And my answer is, you talk about them all the time. And all you do is you become an expert on the problem. It doesn't mean you have a solution. And we love talking about our problems. Biologically, it feeds us. Gives us a little bit of dopamine fix. Say, oh boy, I can do this. And then we get the white horse, and we ride in, and we have the solution. But there's another way to do it. And I want to invite you today to put on a different set of glasses and look at the world through another lens. The lens of opportunity, the lens of positivity, and the lens of potential. Because those also work. And for change to happen, we have to create some energy. We have to create some excitement. The old models of change was to make the current state so miserable, so untenable, that we have to leave. Research has shown us that unless I have a clear vision of where I'm going, I'm not going to sustain that momentum. I'm not going to sustain the movement. So my question to you is, or my invitation to you is, what's your vision? Where do you see yourself in 2 or 3 years? As an individual, as a company? When we're meeting each other in 2 years, what will you tell me you've accomplished? If you haven't thought about that, how's it going to happen? If I'm not clear on my what, I don't know the how. For those of you who know American fables or folks, Alice in Wonderland. When Alice met the Cheshire Cat, the cat asked, where are you going? And Alice said, I don't know. And the cat said, well, then any road will get you there. And that's the case for us too, as individuals and as companies. What I would invite you to do is change the narrative, change the story that you tell yourself repeatedly. Think about what you tell yourself in the mornings when you wake up on the way to work. Do you look in the mirror and say, man, the world is blessed to have me today. Watch out. Or do you start running, I got this meeting, I got this meeting, I got this to do. By the time you show up at work, you're already drained. You're already tired. And then you go spend the rest of the day working. How much energy and excitement does that get you? How much creativity are you able to bring then? Research has taught us that when an individual is stressed or feeling under pressure, there's not much going on between your ears. I like to say you're dead from the neck up. And that's how we go through the day. So I'm going to invite you to change the story that you tell yourself about what's possible. Just like 9 years ago, I told myself it's possible to do this. Now, I'm not Pollyannish enough to think that just because you have a positive attitude, anything can happen. You have to be willing to do the work. If you're not willing to do the work, it's just a dream. Dreams are great, and I have to be willing to do the work. So that's what I invite you to do, is start thinking about what is possible, what would excite you, what would give you energy. Because it's a matter of perspective. It's where you put your focus, what you choose to look at and what you choose to see. And think about how you look at your day-to-day. Think about how you look at your world. And you can change that, just like these pictures behind me. You can change your focus. That's an individual decision, and that's also a company decision. The stories we tell ourselves have a cycle to them. We tell a story, and then we repeat it. Think about when you get together with old friends from the university days. The parties get more exciting, the adventures get bigger, we take more risks, and it adds a whole lot of energy to it. Then we add emotion to it, and we repeat that cycle. And what we've learned is that the often we tell that same story, the more energy we attach to it, the more we believe that that is reality. There is not a committee in your brain that is a truth checker. There are no fact checkers. All your brain knows is what you tell it. There's no committee that says, oh, you're not being realistic now. Several months ago, I met an individual at one of these sessions. He introduced himself as, I'm a super realist. I said, wow, a super realist. He goes, yes, I know what's realistic and what isn't. I said, that's your perspective. Because we don't know what's real. If you think about the phone that everybody has in their pocket, if I would have told you 25 years ago that phone was possible, you would have laughed at me. So that's not possible. Go back even further. If I would have told you 50 years ago some of the things that are happening now, you would have laughed. My grandfather would have laughed at the idea of a self-driving car. See, we don't know what's possible. It's just what the stories that we always tell ourselves. So I would invite you to tell yourself a new story. Change this cycle behind me into a cycle that gives you energy and excitement, both from an individual perspective and from a company perspective. Because even as companies, if we don't know where we're going and what excites our employees, what's the point? We're just going through the motion then. And in the HR field, you all know that employees don't leave companies, they leave managers. They leave their bosses because the bosses can't create that excitement. The generation coming into work today isn't like my grandfather, isn't like my father. They're not living to work. They work so they can live. I've got 3 children, and they have a much different attitude about work. Their story is much different than mine. Several years ago, my son came and called me one morning and said, Dad, it's my day off, and my boss has blown up my phone. Somebody didn't come to work, and he wants me to come to work. And I'm thinking, if my boss had blown up my phone, I would have answered it. He goes, it's my day off. Completely different perspective, completely different story. That same son who didn't answer the phone, 5 years later, spent 3 weeks working 19-hour days to open up a new business. So it's not a matter of work ethic, it's a matter of the story and what's important. So we have to create a new narrative for ourselves and for our companies. And that narrative is about individual connection. We see what we want to see. Research says that I look at something, I create an emotion. That emotion drives what I see. What I see fuels that emotion. Sight is not truth. We choose to look at what we see, and we look to reaffirm things that we already believe. I was sharing backstage. That picture is from the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. That's where I was 13 months ago. I started having that story 27 months ago. And I put a picture on my screensaver of the top of the mountain. And one of my clients actually photoshopped me into it. And that's what I looked at. And I made it happen. That's nothing unique about that. Every one of you could do that if that's important to you. If that's the story you decide to repeatedly tell yourself, it's possible. And I remember sitting up there looking out over the top of the mountain saying, this is pretty, and there were some choice words, amazing. I did it. To me, of everything I've done in the last couple of years, that's the most important. So that's why about the introductions, it doesn't matter. I just have experiences. You have experiences. What do we do with them? How do we use them to propel us to the places where we want to go? How do we create energy in ourselves and in those around us to move forward? Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina has done a lot of research on this idea called the positivity ratio. And what it simply says is that for every one negative comment you make, you need 3 positive comments to offset it. And if you can stay in that range of 3 to 1, up to 11 to 1, because if it's beyond 11 to 1, nobody thinks you're telling the truth anymore. So within 3 to 1 and to 11 to 1, that's where people can flourish. That's where dreams come true. That's where change happens. That's where we address issues that have been unaddressable. It's where creativity happens. It's where passion happens. Think about your own stories that you tell yourselves. Are you 3 to 1 positive to negative? Think about the meetings you're in. How many of you have gotten a memo? Here's the meeting. Then you see who's coming. You go, oh. And you know exactly what they're going to say. And then you come to the meeting, you sit down and say, all right, prove me right. And you listen for confirmation. The meeting is over before it ever started. How many of you kill your own dreams by the stories you tell yourself, your own potential, your own aspirations? Because it's not, you come up with all the reasons it's not possible. And none of these things can then happen. I will invite you to challenge yourself that the way you talk to yourself, you would let nobody else talk to you that way. So how come it's okay for you? Change your own story. 2 simple things you can do. Every morning before you walk out the door, look in the mirror and say, I'm a rock star. I know it sounds funny. But you do that for 30 days, you're going to have a different attitude. Before you leave the office or before the end of the day, before you hit the pillow, write down one thing you've accomplished that day that you're proud of. That gave you some energy. Do that consistently for 30 days. And you will have a different outlook on life and you'll experience life differently. You'll have a different set of glasses through which you're seeing the world. There's a lot of nastiness and ugliness in the world right now. There's a lot of beauty and a lot of positivity. You just have to be willing to look for it. Helen Keller once said, the only thing worse than being blind is having sight and no vision. What's your vision? Where do you see yourself? What excites you? And do you live your life that way? I was telling my wife the other night at dinner, and she loves it when I tell stories about her, that when I'm 90, I'm going to go back to the top of Kilimanjaro again. She goes, can't you have some more realistic dreams? And my point is, what makes that unrealistic? How do I know what's going to happen over the next 30, 40 years? That may be a piece of cake then. We cannot live our life today only through the lens of what we know. And that's what we do. We think about all our experiences, and that brought us to today. And we look at those experiences, and that defines tomorrow. And that's just not the case. Use a different story. I'm going to challenge you to have a beginner's mind. How many of you have children? If I ask your children, can you sing? And as long as they're under the age of 7, they all say yes. If I ask everybody in this room, who can sing? Where did you stop believing in that? What magic age happened where you no longer think it's possible? A beginner's mind has the ability to see things that are possible, despite everything else. Think about startups. That's exactly what they have, that energy and belief. That anything is possible, that we can change. And we believe it's possible. When we become an expert, our mind closes. I'm an expert, and I know that's not possible. Really? Well, let me get somebody who isn't an expert, and they'll come up with a new idea. I always love it when new ideas come along. So Elon Musk from Tesla, he defines Tesla not as a car company, he defines it as a technology company that happens to make cars. Interesting. Ford, GM, VW, they're car companies that happen to use technology. Who's right? Doesn't matter. It changes your perspective. It changes how you look at things. You have that beginner's mind. Remember when you were children? And the dreams we had and the potential we saw? Don't lose sight of those. Yet give them some energy. Give them some excitement. When was the last time you played like a child? That you even took the time for that? There's a great article a while back in the New York Times called The Addiction of Busyness. We now define our success by how busy we are. Well, I worked 60 hours last week. Well, good for you. How much of life did you just miss? See, we're using different definition now because we're telling ourselves different stories. If you have the beginner's mind, there's an openness. There's a lack of preconceived ideas. You're willing to look at everything as an opportunity. It's not easy. I'm not telling you it's easy. Yet if you can do it, you create a different set of chemical reactions in your body that allows you to be more creative, that allows you to make things happen. Those things that we always strive for, we want to have a culture of innovativeness, a culture of creativity. Well, what are we doing to create it? It starts with how you look at things. And I'm going to challenge you, I'm going to invite you to every day open your eyes and have a beginner's mind. See things from a potential and from possibility. Finally, don't focus on the negative, focus on the positive. Focus on what is possible. See, we limit ourselves both from a company perspective and from an individual perspective by saying it's not possible. Now, I'm under no illusion that I work a lot in the medical field. I work with surgeons. I'm not a surgeon. You do not want me in the operating room. And if I chose to do it, I know I could. And I choose not to do it. It's not where my strengths are. As those who work with me, Ralph, you're a big picture thinker. Details don't really excite you. And they're absolutely correct. If somebody asked me, where are you going to be this week? I said, I don't know. It's not Monday yet. I'll figure it out on Monday. Now, it doesn't mean I don't plan. It's really to be in the moment and to see everything that is possible in that moment and to experience it. And to see the potential of that and to give the opportunity and the hope. B.J. Fogg is a Stanford professor, and he came out with a great formula for creating habit change and behavior change. And I think from experience that I've had, it speaks to me greatly. He says, simply, behavior change is a matter of motivation, ability, and a prompt. That prompt being that little thing that gets it to remind you it's time to change. Give you an example. So I have 2 speeds in my life, overdrive and stop. There isn't much in between. And so when I do something, I do it all the way. So I also kind of go overboard on things. So I love ice cream. The issue is whatever size container I buy, I eat. There's no such thing as a bowl or a small spoon. It's just whatever that. So my prompt is when I go to the store is don't buy ice cream. Then I don't eat it. There are prompts that we can look at in life that cause us to change. The other thing is get as specific as possible about it. Not general, real specific. And make it easy. We do not set ourselves up for success. And if we're going to create a more healthy environment for ourselves, if we're going to see the world through a different lens, we got to set ourselves up for success. What is possible? What can I do? And then notice your prompt. And my prompt just says I'm out of time, so I'm going to hurry up before somebody shows up. The other thing I will tell you that positivity drives change in performance. When we talk about change, I said earlier, it takes energy. Positivity gives you energy. It releases oxytocin, a chemical in the body, which gives you some energy. It gives you creativity. That's what drives performance. In the short term, if I put a gun to your head, you'll do whatever I need you to do. In the long term, when I'm gone, you need some excitement to where you're going. And that's what positivity does to you. That's what all the research has done. And if you want to know about the research, come see me afterwards. And I will close with this. Have a positive mindset. And you can read the bullet points. All your successes drive your change. Think back to all the things you've done successfully. There is your energy for what you can do. Focus on what is possible. The other thing, be curious. Ask yourself questions. Ask others questions. Somewhere along the way, I believe we've lost our curiosity. And we just keep doing what we're doing. I was with a group the other day, and we went through an exercise, and it didn't work. And somebody said, well, let's try, even though it didn't work, let's try it again. Maybe it'll work this time. How often do we know it's not going to work yet we try because we don't have any other way to go? We don't believe we have any other way to go. So be curious. Create that environment of a want to. At the end of the day, it's your responsibility. The only person you can be is the person you decide to be. The only company you can be is a company you decide to be. And a company is nothing more than a collection of individuals. We talk about culture. Culture is nothing more than the personal stories we tell ourselves and each other and the behaviors we repeatedly do. That's all culture is. We make it very complicated. It's very easy. So when you leave here today, do the 2 or 3, I invite you to do the 2 or 3 things I suggested. It's how you start the process of change and how you can make change stick. And in the morning, when you wake up, look in the mirror. Remind yourself, you are a rock star. Thank you.